Good morning, Brew Daily Show. I'm Neal Freyman.
And I'm Toby Howell.
Today, emerge from your hot dog coma with a special interview episode from MBD.
You'll hear from the head of one of the fastest growing businesses in the world, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. It's Friday, July 5th. Let's ride.
The WNBA is on a roll. Now in its 28th season, the league reported its highest attended opening month since the 90s and had its most watched start of the season across TV networks. It's clear that Caitlin Clark and the rest of a star-studded rookie class is drawing a lot more eyeballs to the WNBA.
So how do you capitalize on that momentum? There's no better person to ask than the commissioner herself, Cathy Engelbert. She joined Morning Brew Daily to talk the Caitlin Clark effect, how she plans on fixing low pay for players, and career advice from her 33 years at Deloitte, where she rose through the ranks to become CEO.
It was a fascinating conversation about a business that finds itself at the center of so many emerging trends and how a leader thinks about navigating them. You're going to enjoy the heck out of it.
But first, a word from our sponsor, Meta AI. No one likes a know-it-all, but sometimes a know-it-all can be helpful.
Yeah, we go to trivia every Wednesday, and it would be very helpful to have a know-it-all around, actually.
You kind of are my know-it-all, Neal, but when you're not around, I use Meta AI. Even though we spend a lot of time together, I spend more time with my phone, and accessing Meta AI is as easy as opening Instagram or WhatsApp and just asking it a question.
But it's not just an internet search. Meta AI can also generate images from text if you want to come up with a logo for your trivia team.
But don't use Meta AI to answer anything during trivia. That's in poor form. Find a Neal instead.
It's a better artist than me anyways. Expand your world with Meta AI, now on Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Messenger.
Cathy, thank you so much for jumping on Morning Brew Daily. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
So the league has had this incredible amount of momentum right now, setting viewership, attendance records left and right. We liken you to Zoom in 2020, and I'm sure the number one thing on your mind right now is how do we capitalize this? How do we keep it going? So strategically, how do you approach seizing this momentum and turning it into sustainable growth for the league for years and then decades to come?
Yeah, it's actually, you just hit one of my talking points around we're trying to set this league up for decades, not just for this moment. And quite frankly, we've been preparing for this since I came into the league, and we raised capital in February of 22, first women's sports property to do that. And I just felt this big responsibility as the longest tenured women's professional sports league in the U.S. by double any other now in our 28th season to really capitalize on this. We're really hitting the confluence of all these positive elements, generational players coming into the league with big brands. And that's been the positive of the NIL. In college, there's a lot of followership coming from college into the WNBA. And we're so blessed. It's not just this year's amazing rookie class, but the next 3 to 4 years that we can see are amazing. And they're going to have amazing brands coming in. So to continue to look at a decade out is exactly how we're looking at it. But women's sports has been underinvested in for too long. I think we're going to capitalize on that. We're seeing that in expansion. We're seeing that in all the calls we're getting for private equity and individuals who want to either own a WNBA team or part of the WNBA. So it's kind of an interesting time to capitalize on all this momentum. But I will tell you, having a long career in business before I got here, 33 years before I got here, sports is literally not that different. It's a big business, and we have to invest in it. We have to market it, and marketing. I'm a big studier of history. Is this, Angel Caitlin moment, our bird magic moment? And I watched the NBA draft the other night, and it's just like, as you see this next generation of talent coming into the league, it's great to see all the new fans we're bringing in to the league, and they're realizing like the level of play is really good, and they're staying. So that's the good part of it.
Yeah, right now, it seems like college basketball is maybe bigger than the WNBA in terms of viewership and attendance and interest around it. So what are you looking at college basketball doing something right that you would love to port over to the WNBA?
Well, you need 3 things in sports, in my view, to get people to watch, especially women's sports. You need household names, you need rivalries, and you need games of consequence. And what you see during that 3-week March Madness and why those numbers are so big, one, great level of play, rivalries, household names. In the women's game, they're not one and done. They're staying for 4 years. So therefore, people get to know them. And also, I mean, huge games of consequence, survive and advance, right, in the March Madness tournament. So every game is a game of consequence. And we play a 40-game season. Obviously, we're not going to pull that number, but we've been pulling incredible numbers. I mean, to be 3 million over peak last Sunday for a Fever Chicago game shows the beauty of a rivalry that spawned out of college into the WNBA, and we're able to sustain that, larger than any regular season NHL or MLS game, by the way, for a regular season game. So although that was just a regular season game, we're proving that rivalries and marketing around those rivalries will get people to watch, and the human interest stories and what these players represent on and off the court is all playing well. And kind of the WNBA, it's been interesting, sits at this intersection of sports, culture, society. There are women in the workforce, just like I am, but people don't view professional athletes that way. And so we're just a microcosm of broader society from that perspective.
Yeah, that is a great segue into my next question, because for the first time this season, the WNBA is a part of the national conversation. I mean, you turn on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith is talking about the league. You open the newspaper, it's on the front page. But often, like you said, the chatter's not really been about basketball, and it's more focused on topics like race and gender, with the WNBA being used as this political weapon. Do you worry about these controversies overshadowing the product on the court?
Yeah, I don't, because we know, when I came in the league, we set a strategy to be player first, stakeholder success. That includes our owners, the media, everybody around us, and then fan engagement, make it easier to be a fan. So I don't worry, because that sits on the foundation called the game, and the game has never been better. I mean, we only play 40 minutes, not 48, with a 24-second shot clock. That's 17% less. And our players are putting double doubles and sometimes triple doubles up every night, and putting 90 points up, sometimes 100. So, I mean, in 40 minutes, that's pretty Herculean. So I'm not worried about the quality of the game. It speaks for itself. I think these players are role models in the communities in which they live and work. I mean, we just got off our Commissioner Cup championship, where we made donations to civic engagement, especially in an election year. That was important to our players, and I think they understand that they represent these role models in their communities, and they do a ton of work with youth basketball, because the one thing we know, and I certainly know because I was a Title IX kid growing up when Title IX was first passed, is that if you play organized youth sports, at least, through middle school into high school, you're going to be a better leader in the future. And we need more women leaders. So I think our players are happy to take on that off the court stances that they take, sometimes edgy, but, women's sports has arrived. And as one of my owner calls us, a growth stock. And I love that from my prior life. I love being called a growth stock. And, we're no longer looked at. I think when I came in the league, some people were like, are you guys a charity? No. We're a growth stock now. And we're a legitimate sports media and entertainment property.
So you've already mentioned Magic and Bird a little bit. To what extent do you look at the NBA as a role model for growth, and how close would your ideal relationship be with the NBA? In other words, are you trying to be the women's version of the NBA, or are you trying to build this more distinct version of yourself as a distinct league?
Yeah, we benefit hugely from having that big brother. It was the NBA and David Stern and Adam Silver who launched the WNBA off the 96 Olympic gold medal for their women, which, by the way, this year in Paris, that streak has continued. They're going for their 8th consecutive gold medal, the USA women's senior national team. So we're hugely benefit by being associated. And there's a reason why we're the longest tenured women's professional sports league in the country, and it's because of our big brother NBA. So I do study and admire what they're doing. They've done, I think, a beautiful job globalizing their game, doing their global games. We're trying to globalize our game. We have a lot of upside outside the U.S. We have a lot of fans outside the U.S. Our player brands need to grow. They need to be global, not just national, because even when you look at our corporate media partners, they're global companies. So they want a league with a global platform. So that's one thing where certainly I'd like to be a fast follower of the NBA and really just their fans. I mean, there's people who watch the NBA or college basketball who may not yet be fans of the WNBA. And, we did a whole digital transformation to try to figure out who are our fans, what's the demographic, how do we bring new fans into the funnel and keep them, are our fans, today we have a rabid and avid fan base, but we need fans who are there for big sports moments. And I think we're now in the conversation, as you mentioned, in big sports moments like the NBA finals, like other things. And then we have a group of, casual sports fans who are lifestyle viewers, which is why we pull such big numbers on the ABCs and CBSs, because our fans are watching those networks, and we need to continue to drive fandom. So really using the benefit of being associated with the NBA, but not wanting to be exactly them. Like we did the Commissioner's Cup, our in-season tournament 4 years ago. We launched that as an opportunity to say, let's give the first half of the season a little more relevance and let's do an in-season tournament. And then the NBA did that. But there's plenty of things that we benefit from their model. And, they're really obviously successful in the cultural conversation. And so are we.
I want to go back to the springtime a little bit, and the number that was kind of dominating conversation around the league was $76,535, which was Caitlin Clark's starting salary in the league. And fans of the league know that a lot of players actually go overseas in the offseason to supplement their income. How do you get to a world where that doesn't have to happen, where your best players don't have to go overseas to kind of augment their salary that they're getting within the league itself?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we want our players to do what they want in the offseason. We're not going to tell them do this or don't do this, but we're providing more and more opportunities. And I think all the things we've done with corporate partners, league marketing deals, putting players in front of corporate partners who then endorse them and give them things to do in the offseason, as well as allowing them to train. Because the one thing I learned about the players, they want to continue to train and get better in the offseason. And some of our players, if you think the 10, 11, 12 player on a team, they don't get a ton of playing time during the WNBA season. Our season's only 5 months or so. So they need to go play somewhere in the offseason to get better, to make a roster the next year, especially with all this rookie talent coming in over the next few years. So we're not going to tell them what to do and what not to do. As far as salaries, this is because this ecosystem is underinvested in women's sports for so long. We're changing that dynamic. When I came in the league, the first stat I heard was less than 1% of all corporate partnership spend on sports was women's sports, and less than 5% of all media coverage covered women's sports. And so those are pretty daunting statistics. And being a finance person, I asked, what's the denominator in those? Like, how much would it be to change this a couple hundred basis points? The denominators are huge. But we're literally changing it in a much shorter time than I thought, because we raised that capital, deployed that. So we're going to be able to provide better salaries. We're already providing a $500,000 prize pool for the Commissioner's Cup. We're spending well over $1 million on league marketing agreements to pay players in the offseason to stay here in the U.S. and continue to market their team and league. Teams are investing. So we're providing more opportunities rather than just their base salary. And I think you'll see, as we're negotiating our next round of media rights and we're talking to corporate partners, given all this momentum, that we'll be able to provide much higher even salaries in the next collective bargaining agreement, which will come pretty quickly here. We'll start negotiating that next year in advance of the 2026 season. So a lot to unpack there, I know, but we're going to do something historic here in the next year or two with our players and provide them more opportunities for more wage earning. But having said that, I think some of these top players coming out of college are getting huge endorsement opportunities, because I say a lot of people who aren't familiar with NIL say, well, NIL goes away after college. No. You look at Aaliyah Boston, look at Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso. They have more opportunities for what we call in the pros endorsements with partners and with big brands like Nike, like Gatorade, State Farm, Mercedes, all the partners that are stepping up to support women athletes, and especially the diverse women athletes of the WNBA. That wasn't happening, guys, 5 years ago. It just wasn't. And now marketing of these players is yielding a lot of returns. I mean, if you watched any sports over the last month or two, there wasn't a commercial break that probably didn't have a WNBA player in it, in an ad spot for a brand, which is a great sign and signal for the future that the players will have a lot more wage earning opportunities in addition to their WNBA salaries. And they don't get that opportunity without playing professionally post-college. So I'm proud of what we're accomplishing, but we have a lot more work to do, and we're going to be setting these players up for decades.
Toby, I haven't watched any sports for the past 2 months. Have you seen those? Just kidding. I've watched literally 5 hours of sports every single day. But going back to that media rights deal, so currently you are getting paid $60 million annually, and it expires next year. Obviously, these are very high-stakes negotiations. It's the league's #1 revenue driver is getting on TV. Do you have a dollar target in mind for the next round of deals?
Yeah, we have a range, of course, but our media rights deal is. We've been working on this not just because now our current rights deals are up in 2025. We've been working on this for 3 years since coming off the pandemic and what I call our existential season called 2020, where we, were able to just survive, and now we're getting into our thrive mode. But yeah, so we've got a range. Obviously, this year is really helping the future players coming into this league from college, like a Juju Watkins, a Kiki Rice, a Hannah Hidalgo, a Paige Beckers. Those are all playing into kind of a view that we're pitching around the next decade plus of generational great players, in addition to the Asia Wilsons and Breanna Stewarts and Alyssa Thomases who are in mid-career level. And then, obviously we've had some great players retire with Sylvie and Sue, and then Diana, obviously still playing at the top of her game. So I think we're very attractive to a lot of media partners. And I mean, the one thing I did not understand when I came in is why, when even our old viewership, let alone our exponential new viewership, we're averaging over 1 million viewers for regular season games on all 4 of our big networks: ABC, CBS, ESPN, and ESPN2. That's pretty Herculean. So, and that's well in excess of other major men's sports leagues who are looking at rights fees 10 to 15 times ours. We need to fix that. We have a tremendous opportunity to change the whole dynamic here. And especially as we bring new fans, expand the league, more teams, being in more markets. I can't tell you how important it is to have announced expansion in both the Bay Area and Toronto, because the more markets you're in, the more fandom you have and the more viewers you get, and the more merch you sell. And so it's all this economic model. So for, obviously your listeners, I mean, this is going to be a textbook business case of taking a small business, growing it, and ultimately doing things well in advance of the big revenue drivers like media markets and corporate partnerships. And the other thing is, you guys know, the media landscape's changing so rapidly. Obviously, even when we put out like the most viewed game ever on ESPN, well, think about 10 years ago, how many people were using TVs and didn't cut the cord. And a lot of times our numbers don't include the streaming component of a game. And so we're literally on the cusp of something big here. So, and hopefully we'll change the dynamic of this undervaluation in this next media rights deal.
Speaking of attention and kind of changing media dynamics, a lot of what's driving attention among younger people are these TikTok edits of Caitlin Clark, of Angel Reese, of Kate Martin. They are all over my For You page. I know that. These edits are usually set to music. There's usually some sort of hype aspect to it. Have you seen these? Do you know how much that they are dominating kind of youth culture, especially on TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids,
okay.
In their 20s, and I kind of live vicariously through the way they consume their content. And it's actually only a sample of 2, but it's really instructive. To a couple of years ago, my son might be, on his laptop doing work, he's in school then, and I'm watching a game on linear TV, and he's watching just a clip of what an Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark will do, and I'm watching the whole game, and he's seeing a highlight, and he's engaging that way. So one of the things we did 3 years ago is we took some of that capital and did a digital transformation, because I'm like, if our .com and our social pages aren't on, producing great content that the younger generation is going to want to consume, and showing the great play on the court in a 6-second soundbite or whatever it is, we're going to be left behind. Because when I came in, our digital footprint was not impressive, and now I'm so glad it was a great allocation of capital to do that digital transformation, because now, as you say, this younger generation, and we're seeing in our fan demographic, when we're seeing huge increase in our fans viewing, watching, attending, it's a lot of younger fans. And that's what we want, because they're the next generation of fans that our corporate partners and our media partners are interested in tapping into as a consumer, because they're going to be the next wage earners when they get into the workforce. So yes, we're very cognizant of that. We've hired a lot of young people. The other thing raising that capital allowed us to do, I said, it's great to have financial capital, but you have to hire human capital to grow a business. So we've been able to hire a lot of young people who are on the pulse of exactly what you're talking about. And yes, I am on TikTok, but I'm primarily Instagram. But
it's the same.
I'm on Kate Martin TikTok. I don't know when it happened. I must have liked the video, but I see so much Kate Martin content. So it's a great side of TikTok to be on, though.
Oh, what a great story. Kate Martin, not on the draft board originally, comes to the draft to support Caitlin Clark, and then gets drafted number 15 by the back-to-back champions. Aces, makes the team, and now is getting real playing time. So it's a great story.
We'll be back with Cathy right after this.
You must talk shop with other sports commissioners a lot. What topic do you find yourself discussing the most with them? Like, what is the common theme that you're all dealing with across sports that has emerged recently?
Yeah, media disruption, games of consequence. When you have, if you talk to baseball, 162 game season, obviously my counterpart Adams, 82 game season. How do you give the front end of your season significance? Obviously, NBA launched the NBA Cup last year. We have our Commissioner's Cup, so things like that. But it's mostly about the media landscape and how it's changing and how, live sports is actually one of the great remaining properties for linear TV, as well as obviously streaming. You see Netflix now in the live sports, obviously Amazon in a big way, Apple too. So as you look at, I'm so fascinated. We have this one slide that on the left side has traditional media companies, their market cap, their cash on hand, and then kind of the new media, the FANGs, Facebook's, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and their market cap and their cash on hand. And this is more the way I process it, just the transition. And then now all the traditional media companies having their own streaming platforms like Peacock and Paramount Plus, and how that's a subscription model. And that's why it's great to be associated with the NBA, because we, with the NBA, can provide almost year-round live content, because we're made October, they're October to June, but April for their regular season. So we can provide year-round live content to any linear TV with a streaming platform and any just streamer only like an Amazon. So it's those are the types of things. It's really just the disruption in sports, but also the fact that, live sports is really still driving a ton of viewership for brands and for media companies.
Is there a commissioner group chat? We're very curious. Are you guys texting each other?
Who has the cringiest emojis in the commissioner group chat?
Yeah, we do get together from time to time, certainly during the pandemic. I mean, that's why it was great when I became the first commissioner of the WNBA, because that role wasn't a commissioner before. So I got a seat at the table during the pandemic as we talked through obviously very tough issues as we were facing, obviously being out of the sports landscape, which wouldn't have been good for a small property like the WNBA at the time. So yeah, from time to time we get together on, social issues, on business issues, but I'm happy to have that seat at that table.
Say you could buy a team in any other league right now other than the WNBA. What would you pick? Where are you seeing is potentially the best investment right now in the broader sporting landscape?
Well, everybody's talking about women's sports. So there was just this thing over in Cannes that you may know about, this little thing, actually this big thing, where, what was talked about, what was reported back to me, two big issues, or two big topics, AI and women's sports. Those were the two big issues around around just what's going on in the landscape. So I would definitely invest in anything where we thought generative AI was going to change either the game presentation, was the technology. I mean, my prior life, so I'm a little biased here, my prior life of 33 years growing businesses, technology-driven, consulting businesses and whatnot. So I'm a big believer in anything that's driven by technology and that you can scale. Because you have to be able to scale the technology or it's just not going to work. It's not going to be successful and it's going to fold. So I would invest in sports properties that are the underlying investments are technological.
Let's talk finally about marketing. One of your most unique branding assets, in my opinion, is the striped ball. Have you thought about leaning into the ball as more core to your visual identity? It's pretty iconic.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we just did something kind of edgy for our Commissioner Cup championship. We changed the striped ball, but we changed it to black and white instead of orange and white. You see behind me, there's a green and white, but that was Mountain Dew as part of our All-Star game one year. That was the money ball in our 3-point competition. But, we changed the ball for our Commissioner Cup series, which was 2 weeks, 5 games each team. And then we just culminated in the Commissioner Cup championship to black and white with a rose gold lining, because the Commissioner Cup trophy is rose gold, a little more part of a women's sports league. So yeah, we probably do need to lean into that more. Wilson's been an amazing partner since they came in with innovating around the ball. The players love the ball. And yeah, it is pretty iconic. Although when I came into the league, there were a lot of people who said you should change it to a traditional basketball, or you should change it to all right. Then you should change it to all white. And we actually tested an all white ball, and it tested not well on broadcast, especially when you had fans in the arena in white or a white out. Then you couldn't even see the ball on broadcast. So we test some things back and forth, but I think it is iconic, and I think we call it the alternating panels is a sign that you're watching a women's basketball game at the highest level.
It just looks great going through the air too, turning end over end. Let's pivot a little bit to your career. Before the WNBA, you were at Deloitte. You worked your way up over 33 years to become CEO of Deloitte. What did you learn in the consulting world that has helped you as your new job as a sports commissioner?
Well, there's so many stories I could tell that we probably don't have time for today, that I was so blessed to have that business career. Because I had, even though I was there 33 years, I didn't do the same thing. I worked in clients in different industries. I actually was a financial instrument valuation expert while I was at Deloitte, working with derivatives and hedging and securitization. So it was so great to have a broad learning platform. And then I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and I had the chance to become the first female CEO in the history of a Big Four accounting and consulting firm. And that was, another career for me for my term there. And then really just getting to learn all of our businesses, tax, audit, consulting, and our advisory business. So I'm just so blessed, because then what I learned, scenario planning. And what do we do 6 months into my job? What do we hit? The pandemic, and then a racial crisis with George Floyd. So like scenario planning. How to grow a business, how to raise capital, how to deploy capital. I wasn't a marketing person. I was an audit partner, and then I did work in our consulting group for 5 years. But, marketing and a consumer brand, so Deloitte's a B2B company coming over to a B2C company, I thought was going to be really different. But what I learned is, again, sports is big business about relationships. And if you can build relationships with corporate partners, with media partners, the drivers of your revenue, the drivers of an economic model that we're building here, you can be successful. So I just feel blessed to have had all of the opportunities I had and all the capabilities I was able to build at Deloitte. And that's one thing I tell young people. I talk at a lot of universities. I talk to a lot of young people early in their career. I always say, raise your hand and do different things. Don't get complacent in one job. I essentially, every 4 to 5 years, did something different. After 5 years, I went to what's called the national office and did a research, and that's where I became a derivative expert, which gave me a niche, which actually made me, a valuable asset. So you have to build your capabilities, and I tell a lot of young people, it's really important to do that early in your career. Not in the first 2 years, you got the learning curve and everything. But after 4 or 5 years, you should be raising your hand to your boss or your manager and say, I want to do something a little different. I mean, I literally raised my hand after 5 years and say, I want to do something different. And people weren't doing that back then in the early 90s. And then we hit the Enron crisis, which affected my profession, then the financial crisis, which affected. And so you go through these real big challenges. And I always say, in a crisis, your weaknesses are all amplified, but it's also a time to fix them. So that's another thing that I tell young people is crises aren't necessarily bad. You'll fail, but fail fast, move on, and you'll be talking about the decisions you make in that crisis for decades.
Yeah, I mean, 33 years is a long time to spend with a single company. I mean, the Gen Z mind cannot comprehend that. So for everyone at a job weighing the question of, should I stay here? Maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. Based on your experience, how should they evaluate that decision? I mean, from what I hear, Deloitte was such a big company that you could move from department to department and get new experiences and grow within the organization.
Yeah. And again, whether you're the small company, medium size, or large company, I've seen different models for different people. Obviously, if you're a smaller company, it may not be as much mobility across business line segments, geographic. I mean, we had a lot of people at Deloitte who went to do overseas assignments in Hong Kong or Singapore or London or, Switzerland, wherever. And those were huge opportunities. But in a global world, certainly that's something to look at. But I think every leader is looking for young people to step up with ideas, with innovation, to feel entrepreneurial. Even when you're in a big company like Deloitte, to feel entrepreneurial. It was important culture to set. And, I always say a CEO's job is really three things: strategy, culture, and allocation of capital. And, so if young people think about how they can feed into one of those three pillars for their leader, I think they're going to have a lot more job satisfaction and want to stay longer. I do think the resilience we're teaching our young people to stay. I mean, you even see it in college with the transfer portal. Okay, 1 year I go somewhere else. I still think in the working world, in the job world, people should stay a little longer than these Gen Zs want to stay. And I see it in my kids, certainly, although my daughter's now 5 years into her career with a big pharma company, but she's now done 3 different jobs there. Because I'm constantly telling her, go to your boss, say, I want to do something different if you're kind of getting into a rut with your current. And the other thing is, never leave a company because you don't like one person in the company. You're always going to run into a boss or a manager or a peer that maybe you don't get along with, but, get some good mentorship, move on, and don't leave just because of one person.
Yeah, well, Toby left Morning Brew for a little bit, but he came running back.
I came right back because I liked one person within the company. Final question here, Cathy. We could sit here and talk about your consulting career. You've lived so many lives, but we have to wrap it up here. So both the sports world and the consulting world are two of the more buzzword-heavy industries. But in your opinion, which one has the worst jargon? You've seen it all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the consulting world definitely has more jargon. I mean, even I've been gone almost 5 years now in this job. And even when I talk to my Deloitte colleagues, they've got new acronyms and new things and new buzzwords. And obviously with, when I was there, it was cognitive. It wasn't called AI. We invested heavily in cloud, AR, VR, things that, people hadn't really figured out how to make money on, and now they are. And so obviously the half-life of skills changes, I think every 2.5 years I read now, instead of every 5 years from when I was in my career there. But yeah, definitely consulting has more jargon. But sports is a very close second. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, the corporate world uses sports metaphors all the time. We're on the 10-yard line. We're on the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
So they work hand in hand.
No, you've done it all. Well, Cathy, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to follow the league's growth in the coming years. You can bet Neal and I and the entire Morning Brew Daily audience will be tuning in.
Connecticut Sun.
He's a Connecticut
for life.
Sun fan. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait for everyone to hear this interview.
Thank you, Toby and Neal. Really appreciate being here, and watch, attend, and rep and buy. That's my parting words.
Cool. Thanks, Cathy.